What's going on, podcast listeners? My name is Michael Chernow. I am a restaurateur and lifestyle entrepreneur, and I am truly obsessed with living a life better than yesterday through wellness, fitness, and good vibes. I've always wondered if the drive to succeed is something we are born with, or if it's something that is made over time through grit, drive, and perseverance. I get to answer that question exactly, and the goal of this podcast is to talk with people that have absolutely crushed it in life and have inspired me to do the same. This is Born or Made. Before this all happened, I'm sure that there was a journey that your parents had taken. It sounds to me like they were a classic sort of immigrant hustler entrepreneur doing whatever they got to do to pay the bills, and then all of a sudden something clicked and it was like boom, we found our way. How were you receiving this? Like pre-13, you guys were bouncing around constantly, but you were consistently having dinner every night. I'm sure that those conversations changed after that age. Like, how did you receive that? Do you remember feeling a certain way when that was happening?
Yeah, the weird thing about when they got rich, because again, when you don't have something, it forces you to be very, very creative, and your ingenuity comes into play. And then when they got rich, what was weird was that at the moment they got rich and moved us to the suburbs, I was going through my own teenage angst, in my own development, in my own rebelliousness. And so I didn't really get to appreciate their success in the way that maybe they were doing it all for me as their family, me and my sister. I was a dick. Like when they reached their American dream, I was their American nightmare.
At that point, were you already completely Americanized? Like, you didn't have an accent, you spoke perfect English, you were like...
Yeah, I was like that from the beginning. My dad, because I came here when I was 2, so I was raised in the American system. I am American. And my dad, because he dealt with it, he came here earlier, and he dealt with the discrimination and all these things. He made it very pointed to make sure that, like, I blended in and excelled as much as I can within this country. So he actually didn't really focus on teaching me Korean or any of those things. He's like, he really wanted me to speak English and think American, think like I was raised here, which I was, but not have this kind of double life. A lot of what Asian Americans go through, and again, every culture has their own struggle, but for Asian Americans, the main struggle is that we live double lives. That's like the biggest thing, because our insular family life is so different than what America is. You know what I mean? Like the family structure, the food that we eat, the way that we talk to each other, the way that we love each other is different, man. Shit is different. People think we're yelling at each other, and we're not. What I mean? Like,
dude, I worked at a Korean restaurant.
That we are. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You worked at Uleo.
I worked at Uleo for 2 years, and man, did I learn. It's so interesting that you say that, because I got very close with the family, and I learned that, like, you're totally right. Like Julie, the daughter, Julie Choi, her, if you would meet her as a person at a bar or a restaurant, or somebody introduced her, you would never, she's totally, American. Yeah. But her parents, Miss Choi, her dad wasn't really there much, but Miss Choi ran the establishment. She was so traditional. And it was, it's just such a different way of, like, I learned all about how, the Korean community really shares their money, and if you come here and you're broke, like they will put you on, but they won't put you on in like the top tier spot. But if you come here and you're broke, they will literally put you on. They will take you. They will carry you and give you an opportunity to prove yourself within the
Yeah.
community. It's
a
so
group
cool.
it's a group economy. So there's this thing called meeting, which is every Korean neighborhood or group or association or network has it. And so it can be as small as you and me and maybe two other people or three other people. It can be as large as hundreds of people, like at a church or something, you know. But what it is everyone donates to a pot, and then every month somebody gets that pot, and then that pot is again, it's a group collective economy. So then that money can help you go start the meatball shop, you know, because you can't get a loan, you know. You're an undocumented immigrant that can't speak English, right? How the fuck you gonna get a loan? And so it's about this underground micro loan economy that lives within the and that's another form of like us having these double lives, right? We have the life that you see, and then the life at home. The refrigerator that you don't want your friends to open up. You have the lifestyle that you have, that when you go out to the world, nothing reinforces how you're living at home. Because what you're doing at home is not wrong. It's beautiful. It's filled with love and food and smells and fermentation and history and lessons and everything, right? But none of that stuff translates or relates to the Western world that you see when you walk out your door. You know, so the easiest thing to do sometimes for a lot of Asian kids is just to keep that shit private, you know, and to put on another face when you go outside. My dad didn't want me to have to do that, so he taught me a lot of skills from when I was very young. You know, how to fight, how to be strong, how to think, you know, he gave me my Jeet Kune Do of life, you know, when I was very young. And so, but yeah, and so another form of that double life is that there is a sub economy within everything that can make uleok happen. Maybe that person, Mrs. Choi, came to this country with zero money, but because of this collective economy, it just takes that one shot. And that's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, is people just need that one shot. And what we have now is we're not giving people shots at life, you know. And so the one thing about the Korean community is that we already knew when we got here that we were outmanned, you know, in a sense, that we were on the outside. And so instead of trying to beg for acceptance, we just kept our mouth shut and created our own sub network, you know, in the sewers, basically. You know, like we were underground just creating that shit, and then you know, popping up. And then a lot of it is also circulating the economy. It's creating the stores and the merchant stores that the community needs, so then the community uses. So let's say things like dry cleaners or trophy shops, or you know, 1 hour photo shops, or liquor store, or not liquor store, but like markets and things like that. So what happens is, not only did you get that underground economy to create that business, but then you created that business for that actual community. So then that community that actually helped you build that business is actually shopping at that business.
Yeah.
And so it's this legacy that can now continue, not only because it's not about just being built, it's also about growing, and it's also about those things. And so my parents did that same thing. So the reason why we were bouncing around for the first 12, 13 years of my life is because they tried all these other businesses. You know, they tried a liquor store. They tried, you know, we had extended family opening mechanic shops and gas stations and dry cleaners. And we opened a restaurant for a small time. But these are, as we know in the restaurant industry, these are very like transitional businesses, they rely on day-to-day transactions, and if for some reason your neighborhood changes that your restaurant is in, or the flavor of the months change, or whatever the case may be, it's raining, you only got enough money to last you the next month, and so a lot of their businesses failed. And then they found the jewelry business, through my mom's sister. Her husband was involved. He's a legend within like the gemstone industry, and they gave us a shot, and my mom took that shot and just took it to the next level. But again, like, it was overnight. And I remember, like, as a kid, like, I was just minding my own business, and then I'm sure it was more drawn out than this, but it felt like it happened overnight. It felt like I went to sleep and I woke up, the next day in a new life. But I'm sure now as an adult, it was probably over a long period of time. But I felt like it was like I went to sleep, I woke up, and my dad had a Cadillac, and we were moving to the suburbs. That's what it felt like. I went to sleep in an apartment, and I woke up in a Fleetwood Brom on the way to the fucking picket fence, Orange County suburbs, and that was it, But I as much as I felt like a fish out of water in Orange County, it would be like moving from New York City, or maybe what your kids are going through if they were 13. If you moved your kids to the country, like if your kids grew up where you grew up for 13 years, and then the next, overnight you move them to where, to the country. And, they're going to have all of their own impressions and everything like that. And so for me, I actually loved my life in Orange County, and I it shaped a lot of who I am. And I think ultimately making all of these moves, and even moving from the city to the suburbs and back to the city, and seeing all different types of life, it exposed me to who I eventually became as a chef and as a cook. Because as you know now, I cook for everybody, with Kogi. And I'm able to cook for everybody because I lived a lot of different lives, if that makes sense. Like, I know what it's like to be a kid from the suburbs. I know what it's like to be a kid from the city. I know what it's like to be a kid from the streets. I know what it's like to not have money. I know what it's like to have money, And so because of that, I understand in a different way of like what people crave and what they want to eat. And that's kind of like, what the flavor of Kogi became,
It's interesting to think about this, because when you were talking about, going from, your parents like struck gold, in the city where I grew up, it's interesting. The Upper East Side is, everybody thinks the Upper East Side is like the wealthiest part of the world, right? Like New York City, Upper East Side.
Yeah.
From 3rd Avenue to 1st Avenue is really just sort of like middle class, working class people. And then from 3rd Avenue to 5th Avenue, or really from Lex to 5th, is very wealthy. And from York to East End, it's kind of wealthy. Daniel, my partner in the meatball shop, he grew up on 83rd and 1st. I grew up on 87th between 1st and 2nd. And our parents did not have a lot of money. And, there was like... And because we went to public school too, there wasn't a lot of kids that we hung out with on a daily basis who had a lot of money, and there was something about kids that did have a lot of money that I remember very clearly, just like hating on them, and it's sad that was actually what happened, because it wasn't their fault that their parents were just successful. But was there a feeling of like shame for you when your parents went from like, because you see it out there. You see like very, very, very wealthy kids, young adults. That who their parents are, and they come off a little bit like I'm a street kid.
Oh yeah. They faking the funk a little bit. Or they put on that, they have to put on that persona. For me, the wealth didn't affect me so much as the cultural shift and shock and move did, because I had grown up already around a lot of ups and downs. So it wasn't like I was born into wealth, you know?
Right.
And so I never had an insecurity of like, oh my God, like, you know, I need to be hard because because I don't want people to know that I have all this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like because I already had a life before my parents got rich, and just so you know, as a footnote, they lost everything and we got poor again.
Oh,
so but there was like a 5-year span where they had it flowing. But it's okay. That's life. It goes up and down. But the thing is, no, I didn't have an issue with their wealth. You know, I was proud of them. I was happy for them, you know, and I didn't really understand the move, you know, from going to the city to the suburbs. And I didn't understand it, not because I hated them, but I just didn't understand it because I was 13, 14, 15 years old. And I was angry at the injustices, not only in what I perceived in my life, but in the world, in my own mental state. I started just hanging out on the streets a lot more. Started smoking a lot of weed, and I just started to separate myself from success in many ways. I was a pretty good athlete up until like ninth grade, and was doing pretty good in school. And I'm not saying that drugs are the thing that took me away from that, but I definitely got uninterested in a lot of shit, and I got angry at a lot of stuff, and but again, that all shaped who I am today, because I needed that anger in order to be able to be the man that I am today, and but yeah, I just it wasn't the wealth, it was more the culture shock.
Can you go back and try to pinpoint the first time when you thought to yourself, I have to make? Because you're a maker. I know you for a very long time. You're a maker and a doer. And I could remember a number of times throughout my childhood, even in my ups and downs at an early age, where I was just like, I need to make. And that make was expressed in a number of different ways as a kid for me. And now we all know how I make, and we all know how you make. But was there a moment that you can go back to, even in those times, where you were like, I have to make?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it probably, I can remember was probably when I was turning like 15 and a half, 16, when I started driving and hanging out with my friends. And it's not necessarily making like in the sense of like building in the garage, but it was building the philosophy of sharing. And that's probably for me what my definition and contribution to making is. If you look at my businesses now, they're all about sharing. They're all about keeping the price as low and as accessible as possible. Those all came from when I was that age, around 15, where I've always had an issue with money. Not about like wanting to be poor or wanting not to make money. It was just, I have this philosophical, complex relationship with money. I didn't like sometimes what the results of money created, or the greed of money, or what people defined as wealth. And so I always had this weird relationship with it. And so at around 15, I didn't understand or believe in these concepts of like individual wealth. So I always loved to, whatever I had, I always loved to share. If I was going to buy, for example, if I was going to buy a milkshake for myself, I would try to buy 12 milkshakes and go and just give them to my friends, right? If I was going to go get tacos or burritos or whatever, I would try to buy as much as I can till I had no money in my pocket, And I was never trying to save anything for myself. And that's, I'm not trying to say this stuff to be like hero status or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. I'm fucking 15 years old. But it was just what I enjoyed doing. It was like some people enjoy fighting, some people enjoy dogging on each other, some people enjoy doing whatever. What I enjoyed to do was like, make people smile.
Let's get real here. You would rather smoke a blunt than take a bowl hit by yourself.
Yes, I would rather pass it. I would rather everything that I had, I broke in half.
Yeah,
basically.
I get that.
And I broke everyone off. But as I got older with that, and those are the things I love to do. I'd love to just hang out all day long and just share. Sharing was my making. Sharing stories, sharing food, sharing things. Everything I had, whatever I had was yours. I would even share the clothes on my back, whatever it is, you know what I mean? If I had something more than my friend did, like, again, I had no attachment to material possessions. I felt like those things were meant to be given, for us to share together. As I grew older, those things were looked at as childish, and they were going to hold me back, and they were meaningless, and they were detrimental. And so, I suppressed a lot of that, to be honest. But if you look at Kogi today, we're going on 12 years now. We started selling our tacos for $2 12 years ago. Our tacos are $2.50 right now, $2.50. That all goes back to that philosophy of sharing. Does Kogi get rich off of a 50% markup over 12 years? Hell no, But we're rich in community. When the pandemic hit and we didn't know what tomorrow would bring, I feared that Kogi might not make it. At that moment, I put out a battle cry to our community, the Kogi faithful. And I said, listen, like what we just talked about with the Korean community, listen, like Kogi community, Kogi tribe, like, we need you in this moment. We need you to like show up. We're gonna continue to show up. We need you to show up. And then we built also a sub network of charity and donation, that anyone that felt like they want to donate burritos or tacos to anyone, we can be your vehicle for that. And so instead of getting loans, or instead of crying to the larger industry or anything like that, or instead of complaining, we just went to our fan base and said, like, this is the moment we all have to rise together. And they lifted us up, and they kept us alive. And that all goes back to when I was 15. This idea of sharing, and this idea that we're all kind of not only in it together, but what we have travels through all of us together. And it took me a lifetime, man, to exercise that into who I am as an adult. So I just want to tell anyone out there that these things that you may be ridiculed about in your youth or currently, that people don't understand, those things that have convictions within yourself, that your nature just naturally forces you to be, those are the building blocks and DNA of what your potential career or business can be. And I saw that in you when I first met you, very young, early, like not only when you were working at Frank, and being a bartender and remembering every single person, and you looked like you were supposed to be in that position, taking care of people. But even before that, when you were young, you were running clubs, when you were like 17, the door, and you were young. And whenever I saw you, even at 17 years old, I saw someone that was always like interconnected with making sure everybody was taken care of, however that is, whether that meant, taking care of your friends, or, going and being out there and scoring that nickel of weed, or working the door of the club or hustling or building your own businesses. I always saw it within you, and then that eventually became what you do for a living. I never thought you were going to get into the food business, but then when I saw you get into it, I thought back of when I first met Dan, we were both cooks, but you weren't in our industry yet, really. And so it wasn't that you weren't meant for it, but it's just something that physically I didn't see the connection to. I saw nightlife, obviously. But then when I saw you at the bar at Frank, that time, I was just like, this is it, man. This is what you were meant for. And so for me, making was sharing. And I got ridiculed for that my whole life, man, until it finally became a reality. And so if you're in a position right now where people don't understand whatever it is that you believe in, just stick with it, man. You don't know when it's going to come. You have to continue, like a sourdough starter. You have to continue to feed that. You have to continue to take care of it and keep it alive, because there's one day that thing is going to be called upon from the universe to rise.
My earliest memories of us hanging was probably 1996, 97, something like that.
Yeah.
In Dan's basement, late night poker. Dan was a senior in high school. I was a junior. You guys were working at La Bernardin.
Yeah.
And we would play poker late night. And then we would stay in touch. I'd see you here and there over the years. And then I remember, Dan calling me up and being like, dude, Roy just did some monumental shit in LA, and he has created a tribe. And I was like, tell me, what is it? And he told me about Kogi. And he was like, dude, the guy built a business on essentially tweeting out where his food truck was going to be, and people line up by the thousands. And I was like, get out of here. Because you're right. At that time, food trucks, like what you thought of food trucks were like, the red, green, and yellow, like Mexican food truck that's parked on the corner that, didn't really get much love. And this is before the food truck revolution really had started. I mean, you are the guy that truly revolutionized how people eat food on the street in the world today as we know it. I mean, that's legit. And I remember I did it when I was shooting my TV show. I linked up with the Gorilla Truck guys, and we were talking, and I was like, yeah, my boy Roy, and they were like, what, your boy Roy? I was like, yeah, Roy, he's out in LA. He was like, Roy Choi. And I'm like, yeah, you're like the god to this whole entire sector of food distribution in a way outside of restaurants. And so, I mean, what was that like? Like what when you came into that business, and how did that whole thing happen?
So first of all, thank you for those words. And I have to first acknowledge the fact that the one thing that I've always represented and that Kogi always represents is that we always pay homage and honor to the taco trucks before us and the food trucks before us. And that's what makes Kogi so distinct is, yes, we were the bridge to create a whole modern industry. Especially, we were the first to combine technology and food together, social media and food. The whole idea now of tweeting and posting your photos on Instagram and all these things about food, that all started at the juncture of when Kogi started, but there were two communities that allowed us to be that voice, and that is the street food community here in Los Angeles that was before us. We always call ourselves the children of that generation. And so we always spoke from and for the streets and for the Latino community. And there was also the food blogging community that existed right before Kogi came out. And if it wasn't for that food blogging community in the very, very early stages, they are the ones that put us on their back as well. And because of these two deep communities, we were allowed to go out there and kind of like wow out, be our own thing, because we had the endorsement and the trust of these very, very powerful networks, When we started Kogi, like a lot of the folks that had been doing it before us, a lot of the taco trucks and catering trucks they could have not let us in. Basically, they could have laughed us out, but they saw something in us that we respected. We respected the hustle, respected the culture, and they felt like they could trust us with this information, And the way I got into it, man, is I got fired from my job. I had no idea I was destined to become, the OG bricklayer for the new gourmet food truck movement. I had no idea. I grew up on street food. I just didn't know that was going to be my profession. I trained to be a chef, so I thought that my path was to wear the whites, and the toque and run kitchens. And so I was running big kitchens by that time. Like this was 2007, 2008. I was running the Beverly Hilton. I opened a huge kitchen in Century City called Rock Sugar. Before that, I was the corporate chef for the Hilton Group in their mid-level brand called Embassy Suites. And I moved from a one property to a regional to corporate chef. I started my professional cooking career in the thick of it in New York City, in La Bernardine, in restaurants in the Village and West Village, and I went to the CIA. But I broke off on another path because I started a family, and it was chefs like Dan and Nate Appleman at the time, and other chefs within my classmates that opened the hottest restaurants in the cities or worked for the hottest chefs. I went a different path. I went resorts and hotels, and I found who I became as a professional by doing that. Yeah, there was a part of me that was not hurt, but like I was not it wasn't hurt and jealous, but it was a feeling of like, I'm happy for them, but that motherfucker, it was like, I was right there at the precipice, but I can no longer taste that glory, but then that moment that I had those selfish thoughts, I realized that, okay, why don't you look at what you do have? And I realized who I became as a chef, like, I started cooking for people in their everyday lives, not just on a Friday night at 8 p.m., So if you and your family were traveling and you were staying at the Embassy Suites and your kids were tired, or you just woke up for breakfast, like, my whole philosophy and my whole life as a chef became about the people right in front of me and you at every moment of the day. So I learned how to be very empathetic and very vulnerable, as we talked about earlier. And I learned how to cook the classics, and I learned about what people truly want, in their daily lives, at all points of their life.
Not just on a Friday night.
Not just on a Friday night, but like in your hotel room, at your wedding, during your corporate meeting, at breakfast, And so I was a chef, but then the real estate crisis hit in 2008, and I was kind of fucking up at the time with my job, and I got fired. And then once I got fired, I couldn't get another job for like 6 months. I was kind of overqualified for stuff. I wasn't in the right state of mind. What I call it is professional amnesia. I don't think I can look back at it now easily and in hindsight say that this was all meant to happen. And I truly believe that, because I feel like I had to lose everything in order to start Kogi. Because if I had even, it wasn't the idea that I didn't believe in street food, because I believed in it as a person, but it would be like, taking one of your hobbies or one of the things you grew up around as a kid, or that is a part of your family structure, and saying that's going to be my business. It's hard to think about that because we're trained to believe like our professional life or our path is supposed to be different than our family. It's not like our hobby can't be our work. Now it's different with the internet and with social media. Like, your hobby can be your life. But back then it wasn't really that way. So I think if I had, what I'm leading towards is if I had a job on deck, I don't know if I would have listened to my friend who asked me to come out and sell tacos with him. I don't know if I would have done that, but because I had lost everything, and it was months and months of me not being able to get a new job, and all of that previous life being stripped away, that I was ready and my whole soul was ready. And I started cooking those tacos, man, and it changed the fucking world.
Yeah.
You know, like people ate that shit and they instantly tweeted it to their friends, and people would follow us throughout the city and show up. And it was an amazing first year where everything was being written as we were doing it, you know, like we were all creating the architecture for what it is. It would be like building restaurants, or not just restaurants, but building like community networks without knowing what the next step is. And we all figured it out collectively together. And again, like we started this podcast, it's kind of like how what's going on socially from a justice standpoint now. We don't know what the next thing is, but everything that's happening right now on the streets, our people are marching to figure out what the next reality can look like. That's what was happening on the streets with the truck. But all of the things that led up to that moment were the building blocks for Kogi. The sharing that we talked about, my immigrant experience growing up here in the country, growing up in a food family where I was constantly surrounded by food and flavor, being a professional chef, but then not being just a professional chef, but being a professional chef with banquet experience. So that was very specific to this choice that I made professionally to support my family and give up on my ego. As much as it hurt at that time from an individual standpoint, you know, because you want to be cool, right, when you're young, right? As much as it hurt that time, those were the things that actually allowed me to survive and succeed within Kogi. I built up a muscle memory of how to cook for 1,000 people at a banquet. Whereas if I had only worked in small Brooklyn restaurants, you know, I may have not built that muscle or that understanding. But those things were all there. They were all ready for me. I met a group of people within our company, the Kogi family, that filled in all of my blind spots, all of my things that I wasn't good at, they were good at. And we came together as a collective unit. So, yeah, that's where I was right at that time. I had lost everything in order to start the thing that I was meant to do my whole life.
I mean, there's no doubt you made an epic smash, and it was so inspirational. Yeah. And it was also right at the time that Daniel and I started coming together to try to figure out our thing.
Yeah,
and
you guys were going through your metamorphosis too.
And you definitely inspired the two of us in a real way. And look, man, you know, you started really your business ownership career out of a truck, but you've opened up some unbelievable restaurants over your career. And I got a little something to show everybody. This is a sneaker that I've kept crispy. This is the Sunnyside Meatball Shop pop-up kick that that Roy, Daniel, and I did together some years ago when we came out to LA with the Meatball Shop to represent at one of Roy's restaurants. And I mean, dude, the accolades that you've gotten and the sense of humility that you sustain is truly admirable. I mean, I can honestly say that every time I see you, I feel like you're the exact same person outside of the fact that you got a few more tattoos, as did I.
Yeah.
You give me a high five and a hug every time we see each other. Yeah. And, you know, however you are, you know, one of the world's most highly respected culinary talents to walk. I mean, that's truth. You've been named best chef. You know, and you've cooked with some of the most incredible people, and you have a number of different TV shows and a number of different restaurants, and you've written a book that I love. I love that you gave me a shout out in your book. I was stoked. Yeah. I was reading. I was like, oh my God. He doesn't forget. You know, if there's something that you could leave us with for anyone listening that you'd want them to remember this podcast by, what would that be?
Well, I think I'll leave it with what you just mentioned. I appreciate the accolades and all of those things that you just mentioned, and they're a result of hard work, but they're also the reason why I've kept it so real across the board, because again, my philosophy is about sharing and about loyalty. Do you have a loyalty tattoo? I'm pretty sure you had one. If not, but there are a lot of loyalty.
Pretty much all my tattoos are loyalty.
Yeah, but loyalty is more than just, that cursive script tattoo that you see on a lot of folks. Loyalty is a real thing. It's something that it doesn't mean it holds you back, and it doesn't mean that you can't evolve as a person. It means that as you evolve, you never forget the things around you that were there, that were building blocks for not only you, but for everything that you're representing. And you don't have to feel burdened or obligated to always bring all of those things along with you, but you should always be loyal, no matter how big you are or whatever you get. You should always be loyal to the foundational elements of what it is that you have become. And so even though these things have happened to me in my life over the last decade with Kogi, all of the things that you mentioned, I never lost sight of what it was that I was representing that got me those things. Every time that, whether it was a show or an accolade or it was a new opportunity, I always made sure that on the agenda of whatever it is, whatever venture it is, that it includes the lineage of what it is. So even my newest restaurant, Best Friend, right? My first Las Vegas restaurant, huge concept. It could have easily been this like, look at me, I get all the accolade type of thing. This is like a stroking of the ego type of place. But having the biggest stage in the world in Las Vegas, it's like having a Broadway show. You know what I mean? Like being a restaurateur and having a restaurant at a major casino in Las Vegas is like having a show on Broadway. I made sure that restaurant represented everything that got me to that point. So it became a poem and a story to the culture in Los Angeles, to the immigrant culture in Los Angeles. And it was a bridge for those visiting Las Vegas to experience the LA that I grew up around, and to experience the flavors and the hospitality and the culture of the LA that I grew up with, and to experience that without any stereotype. And so for me, if I could leave you with anything, is like, as you grow in life, don't forget what got you there, and always invest back into it, whether that's money, whether that's opportunity, whether that's even if it's through storytelling, even if it's through creativity. Always represent where you came from, because I think that's the biggest problem of why we're in the position we're in now. People forget about the people that are around them, or maybe that got them there, because we go back to this thing where we're so driven by this competition to destroy and be on top, that we forget what it was that we were that person in that struggle at one time. We forget that kids are being born into struggle, and we have to if you have any sort of opportunity or any sort of wealth or accolade, it doesn't mean you have to it doesn't mean you have to give up those things so that you can never appreciate them, but it does mean that you can use that to help. You know what I mean? Like, I really believe that the more successful we get, the more opportunity and strength we have to help others, and it's not about just giving back, but it's about like this human obligation of I want to just leave it with this. Like, I know you're working out a lot, not only just as a hobby, but professionally, as a bodybuilder. And if you achieve the ultimate goal that you're probably striving for, and you become a world champion, that means that you can take that and go, not only have you checked off something on your own list, but now you have the accolade and the worldwide recognition to go and give and be loyal to whatever it is that got you there. Whether that's where you grew up, whether that's the training facility that got you there, whether that's the people around you that got you there. It's an ability to speak for them, for the people that got you to that position, that don't have that platform or that voice. And I think we should never ever forget that, no matter how far you go. And a lot of times I see people that become very successful that fucking forget that shit, and straight up, and it becomes all about me or themselves, or they're all about greed. And it's what we're seeing right now is that greed is the thing that is destroying a lot of what we have together, and we're at this breaking point. And so my advice is just look at the word loyalty beyond the stereotype of what we think that means, and weave that into everything that you do professionally. And if you do that, it's a very beautiful thing.
Man, dropping bombs. That's incredible. I'm going to think a lot about that, because I enjoy thinking through the word loyalty, and not thinking about it as like I am loyal to someone or something, but loyalty as a philosophy. I think that is really powerful. Roy, do you think you...
So am I born or made?
I was about to ask, my man.
Oh, yeah?
I was about to ask, Roy Choi, do you think you were born, or do you think you were made to reach the heights that you've reached today?
Well, obviously, from what I've told you today, you can see I'm a mixture of both. But if I was to only choose one, I was born for this shit, man. It just took me a long time to work through the weeds of my own self understanding and self-worth, and my own anxiety and my own mental state to figure out and to be confident enough to do this. It took me a long time, man. Like I'm a grown ass man now. There's a lot of folks that are able to find it very young, and I was never that person. Like even yourself, when you're 17, you seemed like, when I first met you, it seemed, I was a decade older than you, and I felt like you had all the answers to the universe, and you just, and when you see like your favorite artists and things like that, a lot of them that start very young, it seems like they're these old souls that know things before, while you're still trying to figure out how to get pimples off your face, or whatever. But for me, it took a whole lifetime to figure that out. But I was born for this, man. I was born to lead. I was born to be a voice for the voiceless, and I was born to fight for things that get suppressed, and to be a social leader, to bring wealth and prosperity to life. I may not achieve it all within my physical lifetime, but I'm definitely born into leaving certain points of architecture and blueprints that others can carry on after I pass. So yeah, I was born to do this, man.
That's what I thought. Last question, and I think it's got to happen because you are who you are, and I think people would love to hear this, and by the way, everybody, I did not prep Roy for any of this. So he's going off the cuff.
Yeah.
Last meal, bro. Last meal.
Oh, shit. I just spoke about death. Okay. Last meal. I mean...
And it could be coursed out. It could be one thing. It could be just swing, bro.
Obviously, there are multiple cravings that we have. Okay, I have to first set up that there's a few choices. There's a very humble choice of like just a bowl of rice with soy sauce and maybe like a poached egg. There's a little more of who I am as a person, which is, having tacos or a burrito, like just smoking a blunt and eating a burrito being my last meal. I wouldn't be mad at that. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't be mad at that. Like if I had to go out and I had to go out sitting on the couch smoking a big fucking burner and then like just being in the full state that you would be in, and then just like munchy wise just plowing through a burrito.
What's in the burrito?
Something asada with salsa roja, salsa verde, onions, pickles, chilies. So that whole experience of eating a burrito on a couch, I wouldn't be mad at that. But I think if I had one last choice, I would love to have a sushi omakase, like just sit down for that whole shit, and just ride it out.
Let it go.
Yeah, let it go, But yeah, any of those three would be fine with me.
I remember the first time I went to Chago.
Yeah.
When you first opened up Chago. And at Chago is when I really understood you as a chef. That I went into the kitchen and we made a bowl together. And I watched you put that bowl together, and you didn't explain really much of anything to me while we were doing it, but I was watching you do it. And what I saw you do was layer flavor on top of flavor. And that's when it came to me why you have such a unique palate that people really appreciate. But what really defined you as a chef to me was this like art of being able to truly layer flavors together that just make your fucking mouth water. And I remember,
thank you,
dude. I just remember eating that bowl at Chago, and I was sitting across the table from, I don't remember if it was Dan or it was someone else, and I was like, dude, this is like I could eat this. This is unbelievable. It was like, I remember it so clearly, like it was yesterday. Yeah. Literally, my saliva glands are going right now because I can remember that bowl of food that I ate. It had so much flavor, but it wasn't just like shit thrown together. It was like artfully done.
Thank you.
I just remember just taking a bite and just being like, I'm like all the sensory overload, like sweet, salty. It finished with some heat that was not like heat that just lasted the whole time. It was heat that sort of fell off on the back of your tongue that was ready for the next bite. And I was like, did he like plan this out that way so that was truly the journey that you went through with this plate of food? Because it was literally every bite felt the same way. It started with sweet. I had the salt, and then that heat and acid sort of blended together, and it was sort of like, it wasn't like intense. It was just enough to get you ready for the next bite.
Thank you for noticing all that, because that truly is my style of cooking. Every chef figures out their own style, and a lot of times within fine dining or within the chef industry, it's things that I was never able to do because I have a little bit of difficulty in like processing like linear and formal information, and I can't color between the lines type of person, but a lot of it is about simplicity and about less is more type of thing, and even sushi is just about it's about honing in on, again, the simplicity of cooking and the exactness of cooking. Me, I'm a little more I find my flavor through a little bit of chaos, and it's a little bit like how maybe jazz is. I'm talking like Coltrane, Thelonious Monk jazz, where you're playing every single note in the scale, that aren't supposed to go together. But by doing that, you're able to find a sound. That's how I am with flavor, is that I I'm throwing 30, 40 flavors together that in every textbook shouldn't make any sense. But somehow that became my way. In most cases, anyone that's trying to do that, it comes out very jumbled, and too over the top or whatever. But for some reason, that became my style. I can't do sushi. I can't do the food that you see in many fine dining restaurants in your city, in New York City. I can't do that type of food. I'm not skilled in that way. That's not my voice. I can practice it and I can help and I can be a cook and I can execute it, but that's not my voice. But my voice as someone is being able to take 30 flavors and make them into one flavor.
Roy, I am so grateful for you taking this amount of time with me. You are a legend, and I'm proud to call you one of my old friends. And
Yeah, man.
keep doing what you're doing because you're inspiring so many people, dude, including myself. And I'm so happy that you're a Borner because I believe I am too. I just know that you're just gonna keep hitting the street and doing the things that you do and staying humble and speaking for the people and cooking for the people.
Yep.
Where can people find you?
They can find me at Chef Roy Choi on all social media. They can find me at Kogi BBQ. They can find me on your television screen on The Chef Show on Netflix and Broken Bread on Hulu.
Homie, much love, much respect. I believe we're gonna all get through this, and I believe that there's gonna be positivity on the other side of this tunnel. So, thank you very, very much.
All right, man. Go lift some weights.
Peace, homie. I will.
All right, later.